A lot of times when we're doing this kind of work and we're talking about personal development and growth, people just want to jump. They want it quick. They don't want to have patience. And this work requires patience from you. This requires you to take some time out of your calendar, to turn off social media, to turn off the television, to get still and really come to know what's in the way. Happy Self-Love Sunday. I am Tarnisha Moe Sass, the host of Self-Love Sundays with Sass, where we come every single week so that we can better our best. Well, I'm excited because I've declared 2024 the year of the bold. You're going to hear that on so many videos because I just think this is the year. 2024 is the year we're going to take those risks. We're going to be courageous and we're going to be confident in doing it. And so we talked last week because we talked about the number one thing that holds everyone, every single person on this earth. There's not one person on this earth that is not experiencing it. Fear. We're talking about fear. Okay, so last week, if you followed the directions, and it wasn't a super long video, and this is the one thing about 2024 for me, when I come to create content, it's not going to always be super, super long, and it may be a little bit shorter than what you're used to coming from me, because here's the thing, I want to come here so that you can get 1% better every single time you see my content. I want you to be working so that we can take action steps to get to where we desire to be. This is not about just talking to be talking. And we are addressing fear because the thing that's holding us back from living the vision is just that. So if you followed last week, and if you didn't, please go back and look at last week's video because I break down how to do the categories. Because today, what we're going to talk about is choosing one fear. Listen to me very carefully. Please do not overwhelm yourself. A lot of times when we're doing this kind of work and we're talking about personal development and growth, people just want to jump. They want it quick. They don't want to have patience. And this work requires patience from you. This requires you to take some time out of your calendar, to turn off social media, to turn off the television, to get still and really come to know what's in the way. Okay? This is your year. It absolutely is if you make the decision to do this. And then we'll get to vision soon enough. But right now, we have to address what's been in the way of all the visions beforehand. Everybody's like, vision board, vision board, vision board. Great. You can make all the vision board in the world that you want. But there is the thing is, you're not really putting your true vision. It's what somebody else said that they desire for you. You don't even know what you want. And the reason most times is because there's fears there that we haven't addressed. So that's what we're going to do, okay? The month of January, we are addressing the fears. So what I want you to do is look at your list, and I want you to choose one fear. Just one. Just one. It's not about addressing 10 things at one time, because this is why people also don't want to do the work, because they overwhelm and overload themselves. Okay. So I want you to choose one fear, whatever that is. Okay. Whether you chose something in the relationship, what fear of being rejected, fear of, abandonment. I want you to pick one fear. Okay. So after you pick that fear, you've chosen your fear, you've written it down. I want you to start to ask yourself some questions, because questions become the answer. The first question I want you to ask is, was this particular fear influenced by my past experiences, someone else's experience, meaning I saw this happen to my mother, I saw this happen to my brother, I saw this happen to my father? That's number one. So was this something that I experienced in my past, or I saw someone experience? Next question. Was this influenced by societal expectations? Meaning what people would think? Does that fear come from that? Or what people will say, what people will do as a result of X? Okay. Did it come from any type of societal expectations? Or lastly, is this a personal belief? Or is this just a part of my makeup or something that, has been in my head, hasn't necessarily happened to me, hasn't happened to somebody I know, but I think that it may happen to me. Okay. So I want you to ask yourself those questions, because questions are the answers. Okay, so I've actually created a guided journal as well as guided journal prompt cards. And the reason why I did that is because I understand a lot of times when people go to journal, they may not know what to journal on. But I know that if you ask yourself the right question, you will indeed get to what's been in the way in your life. Okay. So it's not a lot of questions, guys. We don't have to ask a million. I want you to start there because we have to understand what is the root. We're getting to the root of the fear. So, for example, if I have a fear of getting into a relationship because I fear that I am going to be rejected and or abandoned, that fear could come from the fact that when I was raised, my dad left me, and so I felt rejected and I felt abandoned by him because he never explained to me why he left. He just left. And then I heard all these stories from my mom. So I never had a dad. Okay. I just want to be a disclaimer. This is not my story. I grew up with my parents, but I'm giving you an example. Okay. Because we have to get to the root. And I really want you to dig into the fear. Okay. So why am I having you do that? The reason why I'm having you identify the root is because if we can get to the root and pull it out, then we can plant beautiful things in that fear. So let's talk about some exercises that you can do to even help you get to that point. And excuse me, I feel like Steve's coming on. I'm so sorry. Get to the point of even when you're asking those questions, like where did it come from? I want you can do this one or two ways. You can do visualization where you sit and get quiet and you close your eyes and you start to think about that moment where it happened. You can do it by visualizing it. You can do it by just sitting down, journaling it out, writing it out. Those are the two ways that you can kind of pull from, where this fear comes from. Because a lot of times it's like, well, I don't even know. Well, you have to get still and quiet enough to be able to do that. And some people need to visualize it, get quiet and see it in their mind. And some people need to write it out. So either one of those, one or two ways, it's totally fine. But then after you do that, after you ask the question on where it came from, I want you to ask what impact this fear has really had in your life. Whether it's what impact it has had on, well, here's the thing, in your relationships overall. Why am I saying that? Because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Most people think it's not true, but it is true. If you may be killing it on your job, but that fear could be creeped in there too. Okay, you may be killing it at home and not on your job, right? But there's still, even though you're maybe doing well, doesn't mean that fear isn't in there somewhere. And maybe are being an overachiever, right? And going at like just working 59 hours a day and night to prove ourselves because of the fear of rejection or the fear of abandonment from losing our job, whatever that is, right? So I want you to ask yourself, what impact has this had on your life? Okay. And then once you've written out what impact it's had over your life in what area, this is the time where I want you to sit down and say, is what I'm feeling from this fear real? What do I mean by that? If you decided today, going back to our relationship example, that started to date today, if you just decided to date today, is it true that if you started dating a person and it doesn't work out and you guys go your separate ways, is it really true that they've abandoned you and that they've rejected you? I want you to ask yourself that. Or is it that you're not in, is it that you're just not in alignment? See what I'm doing there? I'm asking myself some really true vital questions, because what's happening with this fear is it could be the block that's stopping you from a story. And so we have to dig in and ask ourselves, is the story true? And so here's what I'm going to say, and I should have given this disclaimer. When we're dealing with fears, I tend to, because we're doing this via, podcast, YouTube video, however you're viewing this right now, I want you to look at fears that aren't trauma based, because for those type of fears, it's better to be in a supported system. And what do I mean by that? If you made your list of fears and you've written them all down and you said, you know what, this is heavy, this is deep, then I want you to consider talking to a therapist if it's clinical based and you really need to go there, or if it's something that you just need to work through and need some tools, working with a coach. But those are not the fears that I want you to address on your own. And I'll give you an example. I was touched when I was a young girl by my aunt's then, man. And when that came up for me, when I started doing this kind of work, I realized very quickly that was not a fear, that the fear of trusting a man again, the fear of really giving myself in a relationship, that I realized that was something that I needed deeper help with. So I put myself in therapy to work through that fear. Okay. I want to be really clear on this, because there are some fears where you're going to need help. And then there were some fears that I had that wasn't as deep, and I work with my coaches on. And so, and as I began to uncover the fear, I realized that it was seeping in my home, it was seeping in my job, it was seeping in my friendships. And here's what I'll tell you: I talk a lot about me because I signed an ethics agreement, and I don't talk about my clients. I promise you, they experience the same thing. And once we start to walk through it, they're like, man, I didn't even realize I was doing this at my job. I was avoiding, certain people, or I was avoiding certain conversations because of this fear. So it's a very, very real thing, right? But if it's too heavy, that's when I need you to get the proper help. And honestly, I know people say, if it's in the past, don't touch it, don't go there. Listen, if it's healed, there's no need to touch it. There's no need to go there. However, if you're still getting triggered over and over again in different places, in different spaces because of it, then we have to address it. All that sweeping things under the rug, getting over it, it doesn't really work. And I can prove it, because you're not where you want to be right now, because there is a fear in the way. There is no other reason why anyone doesn't move forward. It has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with mindset. And I'm going to tell you what I've learned. And there was two basic fears, and Tony Robbins is one of my, coach mentors, if you will, and I've done his program. And he talked about two primary fears, and I didn't believe it either. And when I first started, until I started to do the work, and I realized he was so right. There are two basic fears. Once you break this all the way down, there are two basic fears. And I'm not going to tell you about them today in this video, because I'm going to come back and we're going to recap next week, and then I'm going to bring it to you. The reason why I'm not bringing it to you now is because I want you just to start to peel back the layer of the one fear. We're only doing one. Remember that, right? I just want you to peel back the layer of the one so you can get to the root of it. And then we're going to talk about pulling that root out. Just remember that if it is something that's trauma based and it's going to cause you pain, you need to get in a supportive environment. That is a therapist, if it's truly trauma based. If it's not as deep, a coach. That's not something that I would take to a mentor. I think that, professionals, and there's certainly something I wouldn't take to a friend, though I would definitely, work with a professional on that. So right now, a support system is going to be vital for you as you're working through your fears. And I'm going to tell you why. Because you need encouragement. So I will invite you to do this, though, to reach out to the friends and family members that you are close to, just to let them know that you're working on some things with yourself. And, you have some fears that are coming up. And, you just want to you need a friend. to remind you who you really are. And if you have great friends in your life, as I do, I can go to them and say, you know what, tell me what you really think about me, right? And they usually tell me all these things that sometimes I don't see myself. And so if you have great people like that in your life, then reach out to them during this time, because I understand that working through fears can be heavy. And then also it can be enlightening. To me, when working through fears, you should look at it like, man, all the possibilities of what I can discover about me, but also where I can go as a result of taking a look at the things that have been in my way all this time. All this time, I could have been living this life or having this thing. But because of this fear, I'm not moving. And I'm going to tell you something else about the fear. As a parent, as an aunt, we tend to pass those fears down generation to generation. Now, yes, now listen, some of us, we are the generational curse breakers, if you want to call it a curse, right? And we are the chain breakers, okay? We are the first. Great. And some of those fears that you have as the first, we pass them down. So this is another reason why, if you are a parent, if you're just a leader, this is the time to look at these things, because as a leader, we need to know what our fears are. I can tell you every single one of mine. So it's so important that we get in there and do this work. Also, it's going to help you in your relationships, because when you can recognize that this is a fear, you can have a proper conversation with your partner and say, hey, this fear has come up and this is why. And I just need to work through this. And we can work on it together, depending upon, your relationship with your partner. And it's okay, even with your kids, say, hey, listen, this is a fear. This is coming up right now. This is how we learn to effectively communicate. But most people don't effectively communicate. They yell, they scream, they go crazy. I'm talking about how I used to be too. Don't get this twisted. I never come here and talk to you guys like, oh, I'm holier than thou. Nope. I've walked this life. And I was doing all of that because this is my way of being heard because of my fear. My fear was louder than my love. Somebody. My fear was louder than my love. So if we can allow our love to be louder than our fear, our relationships change, but we can't get there until we get real with our fears, peel back the onion, figure out what the root is, pull it out at the root, and replant good things in there. Okay? So next week, we're going to come back. We're going to pull it all together. Listen to me. info@moessass.com. If you're doing this work, I want to know. I want to see what your work looks like. I want to see what some of your fears were. I want to see, what the root of them are. For those of you who want to share, reach out to me, email me. Also, check out my website, www.moesass.com. I have some powerful programs that's happening in 2024, as well as, some powerful coaching programs. Reach out to me. Listen, 2024 is the year of the bull, honey. We are going into this thing living and thriving. The survival mode of living in fear is gone. It is no longer. And I can't wait to hear from you. Also, leave me comments. I read all the comments and I do respond. I do respond to them as well. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week.